Good morning, everyone. Yeah, after the extensive discussion regarding retransplant, I am going to present a case scenario, a challenging case in fact, which we have dealt a couple of months back. So coming to the history, she is a 27-year-old female. Index presentation at 18 years of age, she had complaints of pruritus, weight loss, pigmentation with progressive jaundice. She was evaluated. She had PSC, biopsy proven. It was a large duct disease. There was no autoimmune overlap and no IBD. Since her disease condition was worsening, she underwent a liver transplant. DDLT was done, a split left lobe was done, and they have done duct-to-duct anastomosis. A year later, she developed anastomotic biliary stricture, for which she required multiple times ERCP and stenting. Almost ERC was done 10 times, more than 10 times. And 3 years later, she landed up in graft failure with progressive jaundice, ascites, and recurrent cholangitis. They have labeled it as query recurrent PSC, bar secondary biliary cirrhosis, but her condition was not improved. So she was offered a retransplant. The retransplant was done last year in April. This time again, she underwent a DDLT. This time they have done hepaticojejunostomy. She was doing well for the first 3 months after the retransplant. But 3 months later, she started having recurrent episodes of fever. Every time she has a fever, she also has hypotension. And later on, she developed progressive jaundice with itching. And she required multiple admissions in the next couple of months, almost more than 6 admissions. And every time she is getting admitted, they were inserting PCDs in the liver abscesses. And at one point of time, when she came to us, there were 4 drains into the liver, draining minimal amount of biliopurulent fluid. So she came to us in December last year. At presentation in ER, she was having obvious fever with hypotension, required inotropic support with worsening jaundice, pedal edema, with 4 drains into the liver abscess. So, question to the panelist, Dr. Sumana. What are the possible causes of such clinical picture wherein after a retransplant, 3 months after a DDLT, a patient developed recurrent episodes of fever with progressive jaundice and multiple liver abscess? What are the possibilities, clinical possibilities?
See, in this scenario, I think we should look at 2 things. Importantly, one is a biliary issue and a vascular issue. So you look at, you know that it looks like a picture of cholangitis, and with liver abscess, you have to look at the artery also. So either you do an MRCP or a triphasic CT or a Doppler should be enough in the initial phases.
Yeah. So just to summarize, artery problems can cause multiple liver abscess. Obviously, we have to do a CT. Any problem with hepaticojejunostomy can also present the same clinical scenario. Anastomotic stricture causing recurrent cholangitis. Some rare cases, a reflux cholangitis is also a possibility due to in case she has a short limb. Any medical causes can cause such clinical picture?
You could think of recurrence itself, like say she is PSC, and in the past also she's had a retransplant. That also was mostly because of biliary stricture, isn't it?
Yeah, they have labeled it as PSC.
Is it a recurrent disease causing these? Is also what we need to evaluate, I guess.
Yeah, but recurrent PSC within 3 months is quite not.
It's not known. I agree, but at least minimum, I think 6 months at least you should. The earliest that I have seen a recurrent PSC is 6 months. Though I think literature says even little more than that.
Yeah. What else can cause, medical causes can cause such scenario after a DDLT?
Donor infections or donor diseases.
Yeah.
Is there you'll have to look at that also, I think.
Yeah.
Medical issues.
A prolonged cold ischemia, a prolonged warm ischemia, severe IR injury.
Why would you look at multiple liver abscesses in those?
They also can develop non-anastomotic biliary strictures. It is a relatively less possibility, but still just to consider a list of options which can present like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a DBD, if you're looking at a DBD and then prolonged ischemia and all that, I would think more of, they may have some transaminitis and these kind of things. And biliary strictures, yes, if it is a DCD donor, they may have intrahepatic biliary strictures which can lead on to these kind of pictures. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, just to complete the list, I wanted to add something else.
Okay.
So this was a CT scan when she presented to us. we can see in the scout there were 2 PCDs. We have removed the other two just because they are not draining anything. There was also portal vein kinking. And what was more relevant in this case was there was a linear calcified structure in the donor graft artery, probably a stent or probably calcification in the hepatic artery. We can't say. It was no flow in the hepatic artery. There were multiple liver abscesses. This was actually scanned done 1 month prior. There was only 2 abscesses in the liver, which became multiple confluent abscesses. And what was also shocking was that multiple arterial collaterals were also there, which we did not expect. What was the reason behind this? They have ligated gastroduodenal artery and splenic artery, both. So there are multiple peripancreatic collaterals. Maybe they might have done it to improve the arterial flow to the graft. That might have been an issue intraoperatively, which we can't say. We don't have the intraoperative details exactly. And this was the LFT when she presented to us. Bilirubin was 15 and albumin was 2.2. So my question to Dr. Funny, do you think this graft is still salvageable or do you want to go to retransplant directly?
I mean, this is probably relatively early hepatic artery thrombosis with bile duct ischemia with multiple abscesses. So in this situation, definitely it not be salvageable.
Yeah. So when we consider retransplant, we had a discussion just prior to this session, whether do you prefer a DDLT or LDLT? I want just to summarize the session.
I mean, I think we had the discussion in Dr. Surendra's presentation. Both are options. I mean, pros and cons are there. LDLT in this kind of scenario, obviously she's a septic patient and she's pretty frail, so you can optimize and do an elective surgery. And then you can only decide that you get a young graft, a single duct. So if you can control those factors, LDLT is good, is preferable. But technically, DDLT will be better in her case because your artery is long calcified stick. So if in case you need to use grafts or something like that, DDLT is better. So I think both are options.
Technically, definitely DDLT is better. LDLT provides a chance to optimize the patient clinically. So do we do transplant at the best possible time? And one more controversial question I want to ask, because the patient attendants mentioned this point. Someone told them that LDLT has more chance of recurrence of PSC after transplant. So any comments regarding this?
In that there's clear data that LDLT is equally good compared to DDLT in PSC. So there's nothing, that's not a problem at all.
Yeah, I want to just make this point because they were clearly told that just do DDLT, don't go for LDLT. So they had come to us in this clinical state. So my question to Dr. Srinivas, what would you do to optimize the patient so that she becomes fit enough for retransplant?
So this patient has multiple cholangiolar abscesses are there. So first thing is we need to drain is the biliary system. So we can keep PTBD drainage, and we can give culture-based antibiotics before going for transplant. And she has prolonged cholestasis also there. I think nutrition also should be optimized with vitamin K and fat-soluble all vitamins. If she is orally taking is good, we can increase the oral diet. If not, we can keep NJ tube also to increase the nutrition part. And to see any infections previously, like any CMV infection or EBV viruses, sometimes within 3 months they may cause non-anastomotic strictures with cholangiolar abscess, very rare. We need to look into that also.
Yeah. So definitely the points to consider where we can optimize this patient is sepsis first. So she already had multiple PCDs. Do you still want to insert one more PCD or just PTBD is enough?
So as there is a non-anastomotic strictures are there, even you try to keep one PCD in abscess, it may not help. So better if you drainage the biliary system, so it might help to other cholangiolar abscess also to go down.
Yeah. And regarding culture-based antibiotics, definitely due to her prior hospitalization history, the bug she grew was Klebsiella, which was XDR. She was sensitive to Zyvocefta, Aztreonam. Both PTBD cultures and blood cultures grew the same organism. So what is the minimum duration of antibiotics you want to give to her before considering a retransplant?
So ideally, maybe if it is XDR bug, we need to treat at least 10 to 14 days before going for transplant.
So we have given 14 days of Zyvocefta, Aztreonam combination synergy because it was resistant to everything else. What would be the immunosuppression protocol in this case
So here the patient has already primary autoimmune disease also there, and history of sepsis and multiple transplants also there. So for this case, I'll start with the low dose initially, and maybe within 2 to 3 weeks, I'll build up with the TAC of 6 to 8 with the triple immunosuppressive
I
drugs.
want to concentrate more on the preoperative immunosuppression because she was already on TAC, Cellcept and Bisolone when she had come to us, and she's in active sepsis with hypotension.
So we'll stop all immunosuppressions. We'll keep low dose of steroids. Maybe
Yeah.
helpful.
As long as she was in hypotension, we continued hydrocort, then we changed to Bisolone minimum 5 mg OD. And nutrition obviously has to be taken care. So the good point regarding her was she was quite motivated and family was also quite motivated. They had come to us for a retransplant. So we took care of nutrition and incidentally, she was also had CMV viremia. There were 20,000 copies, we treated it and CMV was already discussed in detail yesterday. I'm so not going to details. So my question to Dr. Smith, what would be the endpoints of optimization? So how long would you want to wait so that you can say that she is fit for a transplant, retransplant actually?
Ideally, it has to be a multidisciplinary approach out here. Being an LDLT as an anesthetist would be much more preferable because we'll have ample time to optimize this patient. And as you rightly said, that she was optimized on grounds of sepsis, she was optimized on grounds of nutrition, as well as the only thing I just wanted to add is any support system required at that point of time. Support system here includes circulatory and the renal support system, which is not mentioned actually. Yeah. So if that is also required, we can just support it and take it whenever the surgeons are comfortable. But we are generally comfortable once the optimization is adequate. Our concerns are only when this case, such kind of cases come for DDLT, because as I asked the question just before, because we go through the Rosen scores and all for the risk stratification part, but that is only permitting if the surgeon allows. That's the most difficult part to convince him. Because if time permits, we had done a case, as Naeem is here, we have done a case together, a retransplant case, a similar one, 45 years old. Patient underwent an LDLT followed by a DDLT. He had hepatic artery thrombosis immediately after LDLT, first one. And then thereafter he had biliary complications. And then he came to us after 3 months where he had all toxic symptoms and he had multiple liver abscess. We had put PCDs for him, multiple PCDs. It didn't work out, and luckily he got a call for a DDLT. We took up the case, but unfortunately we didn't have time to optimize. There was a risk of bacteremia. The CT finding showed like liver was just like a cocoon in it. So as soon as sir opened it, we had something where we didn't want to face it. That was something like vasopressor resistant hypotension, and we unfortunately lost the patient. So I would still say we have to put our foot forward and convince the surgeon whether risk stratification is actually required for a DDLT case purpose.
So that is where LDLT has a big advantage, but what I feel. And regarding optimization, we need to have realistic goals because in this case, liver is the source of sepsis and we have to control it as possible. So clinically, we choose a time after we have given 2 weeks of antibiotics, culture-based, we have decreased the immunosuppression, we optimize the nutrition. And so practical point of view, when she is 48 hours febrile off antibiotics is the period which we'll consider retransplant. Also, due to motivation and removing all the PCDs, she was feeling better and we could improve her nutrition with proper counseling. So this was the labs pre-transplant. What happened after PTBD? Bilirubin had transiently improved but it did not reach baseline. Obviously, it again went up. The cholestasis was persisting. What was significant was albumin went up. We did not give any intravenous albumin for that. Albumin obviously went up. So regarding retransplant options, what are the technical challenges faced in this case? I want Dr. Sumna to answer this case surgically.
So now that you have a liver filled with abscesses, that is one major thing that is going to be a problem during surgery. I think Dr. Sudhindran sir has already stressed on most of the points that for this particular case, I will say that the recipient hepatectomy is going to be really difficult. Secondly, now that the arteries, you said the GDA was ligated or?
Yeah, GDA is ligated and
Splenic
Splenic
artery
artery is
also was
ligated.
ligated. Probably they have done it during the first LDLT. I don't know if they've done
we
that.
can't say exactly.
So now the other issues are the inflow. That and how do you get the inflow is another question. Recipient hepatectomy, like I said, is a major issue here. So there are particular things that we need to take care while you're doing the recipient hepatectomy here. I know there are PCDs, there are PTBD also you have put. So we have to see and the spillage of this abscesses into the peritoneal cavity, which I think many a times we don't really look at it. But if you see in the post-op cases, in the post-operative period, if there is peritoneal infections, like sort of peritonitis, there are other things which turn out like a sort of a pseudo obstruction. People having constant, you can't treat them with any kind of antibiotic. These things is also a concern. So recipient hepatectomy should be done with less spillage of the abscess contents, see that it's, less blood loss is there. I would suggest that in such cases, using hand dissection should be avoided. Very, like say, use cautery everywhere, and because there is a HJ there. Plus, you have to avoid your bowel perforations, and blood loss can be avoided mostly by not using hand dissections, which tend to happen with surgeons when especially after you have a graft there, you try to lift it. Those kind of things you should avoid. And obviously, for hepatic artery inflow, you will have a planning before. Like say you have a triphasic CT, you will know which artery you would try to use. So here, I think, if you're going for a DDLT, you don't have any other options. Like say you don't have the hepatic artery, GDA is also gone, you're saying splenic artery is also gone. So going down, lower down is an option, or you can look at other options like if there is a left gastric artery, that can be used. If that's a good artery, you can think of that. In very like as a salvage, then you can think of like a gastroepiploic and those kind of things, which is like a salvage procedure, which I think when you're having a planned surgery, that should not be a problem.
As you mentioned rightly, left gastric artery was suitable. Other backup options were middle colic and gastroepiploic.
If you're going to gastroepiploic and middle colic especially, I think that is like
you're
losing the battle there. Yeah.
So what we have done transplant on 13th of January. 1 month after she presented to us. As expected, liver was cholestatic. There were dense adhesions. There were multiple cholangitic abscesses throughout the liver. There is one large abscess here, subcapsular. Dissection was quite difficult. We had to be very meticulous. And fortunately, we had got control of the left gastric artery. We mobilized it further till its insertion. Then we have done artery anastomosis with the left gastric artery. This is a post-op CT after 3 months of transplant. This is the graft inflow from the celiac, the left gastric artery supplying the graft. There are multiple bunch of arterial collaterals around the pancreas. So, to conclude, multiple liver abscess after liver transplant, rule out hepatic artery problems, and in case there is a problem with artery, advise early retransplant instead of just wasting time putting PCDs and all. And sepsis control before surgery with PTBDs, culture-based antibiotics is definitely helpful, and this is where LDLT scores a point. And we should have realistic goals for optimization because liver itself is a source of sepsis in this case. Thank you, everyone. Any questions for the audience, from the audience?
So was your patient culture negative when you actually transplanted them?
So we haven't repeated cultures as of now because after 2 weeks course of Zavicefta Astrium, she remained afebrile later on.
Okay. No, because
did not require further hospital admissions also.
There's a recent Korean paper on a nomogram for predicting fertility, and in that bacteremia is actually a predictor for fertility in nomogram.
Yes.
So we have a similar patient right now who are not able to get culture negative actually. He's had repeated courses of antibiotics, but our problem is that every time the culture grows something. So would you do the same operation if there was culture positivity as opposed to culture negativity? Would your plan change?
Yeah, if culture is positive, we would start the culture-based antibiotics, and once the febrile 48 hours, we will go ahead with the transplant. We just can't keep waiting because in this case, specifically, liver is the source. Unless we remove the liver, we can't get control of the sepsis.
Okay, thank you.
Antifungals and the fungal cultures is also like something we should, especially with multiple abscesses and biliary issues, probably give them higher antifungal to start with and see if there's anything growing, and that should be also taken care
Dr.
of, especially CMV viremia being so high.
And Dr. Dharmesh also mentioned the same point yesterday. A patient who has CMV positive, always chance of invasive fungal infection. So perioperatively, we have given 10 days of liposomal amphotericin, then switch to fluconazole.
Okay.
And
Also, the point we discussed about draining all the larger abscesses,
Yes.
even if it has to be a few extra catheters, it's important because not in the setting of retransplant, but in hylocholangias, I've seen that when you have a liver studded with multiple abscesses, all the handling you do during the surgery leads to a lot
There
of
will be
bacteremia,
bacteremia.
and they go into resistant,
Shock.
resistant hypertension post-op.
yes. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Thanks all the panelists for their inputs.